For sure, you will remember the forms of government. How many forms of government we have? You said in the last lecture that are more or less this one, no? Monarchy, aristocracy, democracy, anarchy. So more or less is that there are many classifications. You will remember that also in Plato, like Plato, there was some corruptions, and it's clear that in Aristotle also monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy, each one will have the corruption or the virtues, and also you will find in Machiavelli not one principle for each one, and so many other things, no? So it is interesting. We will deal with this question right now. And we say that also there was another anarchy. So is the government of one, of many, of all, and of nobody. No? So what do you think? Which one of these forms of the government is the best one? Is the best one? Can you imagine? No one of you. Democracy, and why, Booker? Why democracy can be the best one?
Because it respects human beings as persons, and of course it deals with the aspects of all common goods of a people. So I will think democracy, and for that, true democracy is a good form of government.
Just think that the majority always will respect the rights of the all of them, at least of the majority, of the minority. Ali had raised his hand first, then Julius.
Majority of scholars make the argument that the best form of government is a constitutional democracy.
The constitutional democracy is the best one, but why?
I think there is the degree of accountability in a constitutional democratic system can easily allow the constituent sovereign to essentially withdraw that form of system where they find violations of their rights and freedoms. But it's very difficult for the other ones, such as monarchy, aristocracy, but anarchy is classless. Then you don't have an ordering or a form of a legitimate power at place to essentially control these specific individuals as to how to behave and how to be accountable. So accountability is a metric. Then essentially constitutional democracies have the highest accountability and
it's a kind of control. Everyone is controlling everything, so there is more probabilities to have a more security and protection. Julius.
Okay, my view is that democracy only thrives where people are well educated and people know what they need. Okay, most of our states, our governments, you find that there's very few people who are well educated and know what is actually good for the community. So because of that you can get a few people, Booker included, who take advantage of the ignorance of the very many people in the community to confuse them, and then just for you to get the power. So you end up with a situation where, yes, the ordinary people think that they are being very democratic. Yes, they are being given a chance to vote, but they have no clue even what a government should be. They don't even know what they need, okay? So I feel, yes, democracy is good, but it's not for everyone. In fact, for me, at this particular time, I believe we need something like aristocracy. Okay?
Aristocracy.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That is interesting. An aristocrat. Don't you know what Socrates said about this? Have you heard? Well, I will put a video of some minutes that will give the reason to Julius.
Julius have dangerous ideas.
Oh, very good. But you're
Dangerous.
part or not of the aristocracy, Julius, or not?
What's that?
Are you part of the aristocracy? Or who is the aristocrat? Well, let's
I
see.
mean, that is something that can be defined. But what I'm saying is that you need people who know.
We're used to thinking very highly of democracy, and by extension of ancient Athens, the civilization that gave rise to it. The Parthenon has become almost a byword for democratic values, which is why so many leaders of democracies like to be photographed there. It's therefore very striking to discover that one of ancient Greece's greatest achievements, philosophy, was highly suspicious of its other achievement, democracy. The founding father of Greek philosophy, Socrates, is portrayed in the dialogues of Plato as hugely pessimistic about the whole business of democracy. In Book 6 of the Republic, Plato describes Socrates falling into conversation with a character called Adimantus and trying to get him to see the flaws of democracy by comparing a society to a ship. If you were heading out on a journey by sea, asks Socrates, who would you ideally want deciding who was in charge of the vessel? Just anyone, or people educated in the rules and demands of seafaring? The latter, of course, says Adimantus. So why then, responds Socrates, do we keep thinking that any old person should be fit to judge who should be the ruler of a country? Socrates' point is that voting in an election is a skill, not a random intuition. And like any skill, it needs to be taught systematically to people. Letting the citizenry vote without an education is as irresponsible as putting them in charge of a trireme sailing to Samos in a storm. Socrates was to have first-hand catastrophic experience of the foolishness of voters. In 399 BC, the philosopher was put on trial on trumped-up charges of corrupting the youth of Athens. A jury of 500 Athenians was invited to weigh up the case and decided by a narrow margin that the philosopher was guilty. He was put to death by hemlock in a process which is, for thinking people, every bit as tragic as Jesus' condemnation has been for Christians. Crucially, Socrates was not elitist in the normal sense. He didn't believe that a narrow few should only ever vote. He did, however, insist that only those who had thought about issues rationally and deeply should be let near a vote. We have forgotten this distinction between an intellectual democracy and a democracy by birthright. We have given the vote to all without connecting it to wisdom. And Socrates knew exactly where that would lead, to a system the Greeks feared above all, demagoguery. Ancient Athens had painful experience of demagogues. For example, the louche figure of Alcibiades, a rich, charismatic, smooth-talking, wealthy man who eroded basic freedoms and helped to push Athens to its disastrous military adventures in Sicily. Socrates knew how easily people seeking election could exploit our desire for easy answers. He asked us to imagine an election debate between two candidates, one who was like a doctor and the other who was like a sweet shop owner. The sweet shop owner would say of his rival, "Look, this person here has worked many evils on you. He hurts you, gives you bitter potions, and tells you not to eat and drink whatever you like. He'll never serve you feasts of many and varied pleasant things like I will." Socrates asks us to consider the audience's response. Do you think the doctor would be able to reply effectively? The true answer, "I cause you trouble and go against your desires in order to help you," would cause an uproar among the voters, don't you think? We have forgotten all about Socrates' salient warnings against democracy. We have preferred to think of democracy as an unambiguous good rather than as something that is only ever as effective as the education system that surrounds it. As a result, we have elected many sweet shop owners and very few doctors.
Well, now, once again, what do you think about Socrates? So you agree? So you are now with Julius? You have
No.
no. I mean Wawunda. That he put. I agree.
I think Socrates is talking about democracy with the political education, because he's saying the voting is just not, an event, but it's a skill that needs to be acquired. So he's talking about the importance of political literacy among
I think that he did not exactly political education, but to see who can vote, and that was a big concern during the last 300 years. Now, who can vote? And for many people, time ago, it was clear that not all people, not all of them. No, but I was talking about Wawunda. But
my challenge is when voters do not understand what they are voting, and sometimes they sell their votes. Really, should they be voting? Because if we are voting representatives, we are voting representatives who should be thinking about our common good, but not selfish representatives who will go to amass wealth and make our lives more miserable than they found it. So I truly think very seriously about voter education. And if we don't have proper voter education, then do we have to put people in who do not serve our interests? Those are some of the questions I keep asking myself.
Yeah, seems to be that it's not so easy that we Eric, yes.
Okay, my contention, as much as that is, I mean, it's not like we're speaking in a bubble. The kind of aristocracy, democracy has been tried, whether it's you're looking at the UK or the US, where they used to have a small cabal of people who are landowners voting as their representative because they're the ones who have the power. But still, they went and served their own interests. I mean, the House of Lords is purely landowners who create their own whatever. So I don't understand fine, I can accept that people, not all people are educated or have whatever, but to transfer that to just a group, and you expect that these educated people will sort of have the best interest of the majority is also ludicrous. I'm sorry to say so.
Okay. So more or less all of you, I think that you agree that democracy should be, but democracy, the typical thing, cannot operate well without certain conditions. You only mention education. I will put many others requirements. You only mention education. What I will say that even there should be a minimal respect for essential human values, no? Because if the whole community agrees to sacrifice everyone, well, but I will say probably that to sacrifice in such a way that in Mexico time ago, probably you need a little humanitarian law, no? People that stop very bad things in that community. Or the existence of free, authentic, and plural objective means communication. That is another thing. That is another thing. We born with television, at least, no? We're born with television and phone and everything. But 2,000 years ago, or even 200 years ago, there was not the way to print the face. So if you don't know this first, at least the name and the face, and if you don't know nothing, you have no idea about his life because you don't have social media, well, you cannot vote to anyone because you don't have no clue who is that guy and who is the other, and you just have one idea that someone mentioned about someone. So at the end of the day, democracy will not operate well. Education, a minimal thing, yeah, for sure. But many times, what kind of education? That is a very deep question. But what kind of education? Well, an education for practical reason, for political purpose, should be very focused. No, certain political maturity is needed. Yeah, in such a way that every people could be capable of knowing probity or the political actors and their language, understand that many times they are showing many things that will be not real, many other things, or at the end of the day, without being fooled by the fantasies that many people used to show. So it's not a general education, at least it's a minimum requirement to many times people used to put to read, and if people cannot read, cannot vote, nowadays with photographies is even easier, and with television and many other things, well, to read seems to be that it's not that so important as in the past. That's why time ago they used to put a census. Now at least, well, with some properties, because some properties will assure you something. No? That was more or less the idea. That was more or less the. We will go back to that idea when we will see the history. But in any case, you can see that people of 100 years ago and 2,000 years ago were reasonable, were not stupid. They put one. But in any case, any one of you believes, well, one Julius was aristocracy. Any one of you, and most of you, democracy. Another possibility, there is no other possibility. Do you know what Aquinas said? And why? It's the most important, not just choose one. Don't you know the answer of Aquinas? For me, is the best one. Yes, no. So no, perfect. Leon, thank you for answering. But Aquinas said monarchy. He was living on monarchy, by the way. For anyone in that time, they will answer, most of them, monarchy, because you can educate the monarch to, yeah, it was a man of his time, but was deep, was not just a man of, I think that was deeper than many others. You will see the answer, the whole answer, no? She said, yeah, because he will put an incredible example, no? Because the government of one, as we can see in God, is the best one. Wait. Because it gives unity. It gives unity. And a government divided in two is going to destruction. If you have two that are governing with the same power, well, that house cannot be maintained. It will, and that is quite interesting. If you want to assure unity, and you want to assure some strength to fight against something that is very evil, what you should do? To create a dictator, to give the whole powers to one person to solve that problem. That is the notion of the state of exception. The state of exception is that give to all the powers to one guy to solve the very big problems. Many times, even in democratic states, we need that. And it's very well regulated in the Roman Empire, and today, in every constitution, they realize if we're fighting with something that is one army that is coming, it's approaching to the capital, to Nairobi, well, I will give everything to save my life to one guy. That is the notion of, but he adds Aquinas. But we need to be God to govern everything, and that is impossible to human beings. Wow, that is not a man of his time. He realized that there is something that is not fitting well here, no? And he realized, well, we are not God. We cannot solve everything. We need people. We need people to resolve. We are not God. No? That is perfect for God. And fits perfectly. But the government of human beings should be a little different, he said. The government of human beings should be a mix. That was the answer. A mix, a little of monarchy, a little of aristocracy, a little of democracy, and a little, he never said anarchy. He never will consider in his treatise. I will say a little of anarchy too. That is my contribution. It's just, but it's the same idea of Aquinas. I agree with Aquinas. And you can see that more or less people realize today that you need a mix of all of them. Because most of the countries now have a strong president that gives unity and will have the whole powers when there is a great evil things that are coming, catastrophes and many things, no? And strong power to give unity to the country. But then you will have another power in the parliament with democracy, elected by the people, more or less sharing the same powers. I mean, all of them, of the deputies, and that is democracy. Normally, when we think about democracy, we think in the parliament, elected by everyone. But then, how to govern everything? The president cannot govern everything because he's not God. He's not God. So he will need a group of people, and he will try to find the smartest one in, for example, in health. Who is the guy that really knows about health, management of health? This guy I will put as a minister in the Ministry of Health or whatever you want. And who knows very well about the social works and an engineer? I mean, perhaps an engineer or a manager, I don't know. Well, let's try to find the best one. And every president will have, or in the parliamentarian, there will be a cabinet with the smartest people, or at least that someone thinks that are the smartest one or the most skilled one. And that is aristocracy. That is precisely the notion of aristocracy. We will not give the shit to anyone. No. The Ministry of Economy cannot be anyone. At least should know little notions about economy. And if he knows more, we will be better. We will be better. So let's give it to the one that really knows. That is aristocracy. And finally, I will add anarchy. You have an article of myself that I published in Switzerland, that one. Precisely that. If the theory of Aquinas is right, we should include also a little doses of anarchy. So, and why? Because there are many things that the state cannot regulate. According to the principle of subsidiarity, the state cannot be, the president cannot knock your door and enter and decide everything at home. Why? Because, well, parents will have the power there. The government, the state have nothing to do there. They have to go out, go away. They have no clue in your home. So obviously you can say, well, in this case of a crime, well, but exceptionally in some cases could be, but not as a general rule. So I will put many places where there should be no government at all. Many places. And the problem is that in the last years, I mean, in the last 30 years, the state is growing and controlling everything in family, everything in your private property, everything in your communications, everything is controlling more than us, because now they have more means to control everything. So I will advise for a little doses of anarchy in many places. That is my point of view. I don't know if you share the idea and the point of view of Aquinas. Obviously, a little different, but the idea, I think that is clear. Now in every state we have a mix. a mix of all of them, That was the Aquinas idea. Okay, so so let's go now to one thing that could be interesting to you to see how it works in the world. This is 2010, according to one institute of Stanford. So they divided. Well, there are many of these maps. I just choose some of them to show more or less how things are in the world. Multi-parties, monarchies. Monarchies, today we don't have so many around the world, as you can see. Democracies, people used to believe that America is going well. More or less is the same idea. No? We were part of Spain and the states of the UK. And after the independence, we organized the democracy. Well, with a lot of, we had more or less more than 200 of life on democracy. So little by little, it is consolidated. I mean, everywhere it is developing the notion of democracy. Also in Europe, as you can see, in Australia, there are a lot of military governments here. You can see the multi-parties. There are many parties, but probably one is governing. Many people will use another language, by the way. For example, with easy words, the economist will say the most democratic and the less democratic. There are middles. No? This is the economist in the last year, 2020, published an index. He's publishing continuously this index. So it's interesting, no? And it's interesting. Canada more than the States, he put here, no? I don't know why. There could be some discussions in the reason, of course, always, no? They will say, no, in the States it's just two parties, Canada, probably many. I don't know what is the reason. And they will put Russia and many other countries not so well, China, one party. As you can see, there is exactly the contrary of democracy. You will say, well, no, but the people in the party can vote. Well, not so much. If you don't vote normally, in many of these countries on history, all decisions of the party are unanimous. 100% of the vote of all people. And if you vote against that, well, you will be punished probably many times in history in many of these countries. They will say, no, but you can talk before the votation because, yeah, so you are putting at risk. There is a lot of fear to vote against the party, to not to be in the party. So you can see that there are many possibilities, no? Also on democracy. And another map, they try to put with a lot of terminology, well, blue, full president Republicans, green, yellow president Republicans, orange parliamentary, red and pink parliamentary constitutional monarchies. Well, in any case, I think that it's good to see that the presidential republics now is very famous around the world. It's very famous. It's more or less the most common thing. The constitutional monarchies is not so recognized as Spain, for example. You can see there. In some states of the Commonwealth, you have more or less the same thing. Canada, Australia, as you can see there. Well, obviously brown single party republics, China, and some little countries that are very close also. You can see 4 of them there. And also you have a great countries without any, that don't fit in any of them. Normally small islands, small communities. And if you have a small community, well, these big farms are what I'm trying to show with this map, that remember the division of powers. One thing is the division of powers, and one very different is the distribution of powers. You can divide the powers and give all of them to the same person, to the king. But ideally, you say, well, they divided this group of people that are working with the king are the judge, and the others, the parliament, and the other. You can see, but at the end of the day, the one who has the whole power is the king. Quite different is the distribution. So, for example, today the president is a legislator today. The strongest vote in any law is of the president in the presidential republics, because he can put a veto. A veto is a thing that any deputy has, just the president. So is the strongest legislator. It's not just a matter of division of the power, but of distribution of the powers. So the power of the legislative is distributed among the deputies and the president. Can you see? Can you see? Sometimes happen the same with another powers, huh? Like the power to control, but among many other people. The distribution of the power. Now you have a concept. One thing is the division, but it's not enough. The division is how we will distribute the powers, and probably it's good to put in many people and not just in one. Many times sharing the same power between some people, different people, the president, the legislative, the judiciary, the peoples, and many others. No? Well, I think that this is very informative, how things are in the world, at least 10 years ago. This is a map of 20, and let me see, one last map. And this is, I don't know how to read this really, because this is a study of the trends in each country. What will be the full democracy, they are new terms, anarchy. Anarchy is it seems that this is a democracy, but it's not working well. But in any case, if it is open, it allows some parties, many parties, and it's closed, it don't allow. At the end of the day, everything, the constitution will say that we are democracy, but it's just one people, one party governing the whole state, So this is a study of more than 50 years of what's happening in the world, and they will say, well, these are trends, as a trend, obviously. It's not conclusive, failed or occupied. No? You have also some states that there is not democracy at all, autocracy at all, that, well, you can see the number of government, the parties. So, one question here, what do you think? Why some countries have just 2 parties as the states, and others have 10, 20, 30 parties in the same country? What is the reason? You have some numbers here according to this study. What is the reason? You have one or more?
Individual interests.
Individual interest. Okay, Nicholas.
Sometimes based on tribal or ethnical issues. Each region within a country wanting to form their own party.
More, yeah, Josephine, yes.
Ideology in certain parts of the
There are many
country.
people with different point of views. Yeah, Nicholas will say, no, we have a lot of diversity, 43 tribes, so it's impossible to have just one party. Any other idea? Culture, ethnicity, geography? I will say no. And here specifically a clear no. I will explain at the end of this lecture. I will say that this is a matter of the law, the Britain law. And this is so clear, at least in many countries. That is the typical approach that if you don't know electoral law, You will believe no, not everything is perfect in electoral. No. The question of the number of parties is a question of Britain law. I will explain later, but I want to explain a little first, because well, the forms of government we have here, the same thing that we have. That there is not the only way of organize the government. We have to take care of many other issues, things that you have in mind. Obviously, depending on the number of governors, they could be monocratic, aristocratic, democratic, or anarchic governments, no? As you can see. But also you can see, let's put another criterion. According to justice, well, the decision can be honest government or tyrannic one, no? And you can have the division of Aristotle, you will remember, no? Also, anarchy can be a good or a bad one. It could be the worst one, also, no? Depending on the legitimacy with which power was assumed, there may be legitimate and illegitimate government. That is different. No? One is that they are doing good things or evil, unfair things, and the other is I assume the power in which way, legitimately or not, or according to the way of nominating governor. That is quite interesting. No? There could be an hereditary, for example, kingdoms, hereditary appointment, self-nominated government. There is a chaos in my country, and I will decide I will govern this. And people follow me. So I was auto-appointed, self-appointment. So that happened in many places, by the way. Nominated by competition, typical election, or elected by the people or by the authority. The ministers normally are nominated by the authority, the president, directly or indirectly. We can see some cases randomly. There is a kind of democracy, the democracy by chance. And this is very important. Many times it's not for the whole authorities of the country, but there are some positions that have a little fun. In my country, for example, they included in the constitution the idea of the empty chair. It is called the empty chair. So in every county, there should be an empty chair. So anyone that is crossing can go there and can sit there. Imagine that, and decide the things with everyone. A random democracy. That is a theory of many people. So you can see that you can use many criteria to organize the government. I will put minority can govern also the majority, or should be unanimous approval of the laws. There is also many ways, or by acclamation. That was very, very famous 1,000 years ago, and or more. Many authorities, also, for example, the Pope, time ago used to be acclaimed by clapping. No? Incredible. No? That was in the 5th century. You know? So now we cannot believe in that. But what history is so rich, so rich. So there are many possibilities of democracy or appointment of people. No? By random evenly, depending on the duration of the position. There could be obviously short position, or just you will do that, the dictator. You will resolve the problem and go away. The Roman Empire, go away, and you cannot ask to be the emperor or the ruler in at least some years. So that was a rule for the dictator in Rome. You know, one specific task and done. Or short-term positions, or medium and low duration, or for life. No, life position with one renewal or more. So each one it's good to think about that. I will say that we have to consider all of them if we want, because if we have more means, once again, if we have more possibilities, well, it will give us a little more freedom to choose this. In the judiciary, how will be the appointments, and in the executive and in control. So we can have a lot of possibilities here. In the code, I specify some. I put rules of governance. That is more or less the question, the first question of Booker of today. Well, how to achieve that goals, no? Well, I put some principles of governance for each specific power of the state. You will read, it's in the code. It's impossible to talk in just a few minutes about all of them, but you will read, and I think that probably it can help or not. So, I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm so sorry. I mean, please, if you see that there is any mistake of form or it's absolutely wrong one thing in the code, please email me. I really appreciate to read your comments. So, and depending on the specialization, there could be more specialized powers or not so much. The anti-kings have everything together. So, with this, more or less, we already see the forms of governance.